Hi, welcome back. In this video we're going to go through installing most of the Z components onto the frame that we built earlier. Here's a reminder of what we have and what we'll need. So we've got 4 gearboxes to the idlers, which are these 4 items here. The 4 pieces in the middle here are our motor end mounts along with their pulleys. This is a little jig that you can print that helps for installation, and I think it's that side that you use to put in. Yeah, it's got Z written on the little tab here. You see now that slides in quite nicely without catching on anything, which is perfect. So all I've got to do with these is put a quick bit of Loctite on them, the blue thread locker, which we showed in the last episode. I'll do that off camera and we'll get right swiveled round to the frame and start putting things on frame. Before we switch over to the frame view, let's just have a quick review of the parts we're going to need. So we've got a boatload of M3x8 screws. We have a bunch of M3 T-nuts. Now these are the ones that twist and lock in. They're not the ones that click in, like that don't slide around. So I'm not sure if these would be good enough. We've got the 4 500 well, these are 580 millimeter long rails. That's why we have a frame of 700 high. We've got some guides. These little things here help us put the rails on. They click over the rail and click over the frame and keep it all nice and lined up for us. So I have 3 of those printed. You can print them out of pretty much whatever you like because they're just tools to help with assembly. I do have some for 12mm rail when we get to the gantry as well, but we don't need those just yet. We have some large M5 bolts. These are for mounting the 4 feet into the frame. We have a bunch of shorter button heads. These are for mounting the motor mounts onto the frame. And I've already put the long M5 bolts through the idlers, which will go on the top of the frame when we get to that. We have our 1, 2, 3, 4 tensioner cams for spacing the gear from the motor. So we'll look at that as we're going through as well. So that's everything you need. I've already put a bunch of M5 clip-in T-nuts onto the frame. These are the ones that don't move around when you're trying to screw things down. I just don't have any of the M3 ones. They haven't arrived. Let's switch to the video camera that I can move around. Okay, so set the camera up to look at the corner of the frame. Each corner is the same procedure as the one I'm going to show you. So I'm only going to show you putting one of them on. I'll do the rest off camera and show you when we're all done. Okay, so as I was saying, is you've got the 9mm pulley. This should be sitting over the hole. There's one in each corner that the belt is going to go through. And if you can line up the nuts, right, this is going to sit ideally right here when we're done. So if you can line up the nuts so that they will, is the screws just sticking a little bit out of the bottom, and line them up with the holes for these nuts. They'll just slide a little bit, whatever you can to get them to line up. I'm tipping it, you can't see very well there probably, but I'm just sliding them. So if I turn it this way, the wrong way around, but you want to just slide it so that the threads are going to drop right in when you put this on top. So that's about where it is now. That's on the end. So yeah, that's all lined up. So we should be able to just drop this on top gently. Get our Allen wrench. A long one is better for this job. And just get these gripping. You'll feel them grip it hopefully right away. I've got that gripping. Now I just want to line it up so that I'm nice and flush with the edges of the frame. Okay, so I'll do that just as close as you can, and then just tighten these down. So that one, tighten this one down here as well. You don't want this to move. There's going to be quite a bit of pressure on it once you start moving the gantry up and down and accelerate in both directions. So try and get them tightened down nicely so they're not going to move. Now for the motor mount, it's pretty much the same procedure. just trying to line the holes up as much as possible. I've got this a little bit of away right now. So we want to get these two screws to drop into these, and then we'll push it out. But before you drop it in, you need to get belt over the pulley as well. Right now, as you can see, they don't match up because the screws are too far away. So I need to move these screws much closer in to where I'm going to be putting it. So they're lined up. Good. So now let's see if I can get these to go in. So remember, take your pulley, drop it over your wheel, take your pulley, drop it over the gear. 188 tooth belt. Hold it gently down. You don't want to make the screws, the T-nuts slide around, but you do need to want it to go in. The other one to go in. Backing it off. Now, what you need to do is make sure that this pulley mechanism belt is going to ride parallel. So you can use the side of the motor. I'll take a static picture from the top and show you to be nice and level. But what you're going to use is this cam. It'll push it away and tension the belt. But what you want to make sure that doesn't happen is it twists, right? You want to make sure you hold that so that it's nice and straight. So having it loose when you put the belt on is obviously a lot easier because it's, well, loose. But once you tighten it up, it will be much harder to squeeze the belt in, but you need it tight for when you screw those two screws up. So let's get our Allen key in here again. Down just a bit, which will straighten the motor up. So I'm going to start off with it just gently tightened and just check motor to make sure it's not askew. It's in parallel. So tighten it down so that it's not going to move, and that's pretty much done. Make sure everything is still rotating freely. Obviously now you're driving a stepper motor, so it'll have a bit more friction to it. Just twiddle it around a bit. You've got access to the back of the wheel here, just to make sure that it is not going to be binding. Make sure the belt's not trying to ride off the edges of the flanges. That looks great. So that's what you got to do, and we just have to rinse and repeat for all four. So I'm going to do the other three off camera, and then I'll come back to it. Okay, so got all the four corners put on. I've actually put a few of the skirts on too, just to show you what it's going to look like. I will screw these skirts in. You just 3D print these into whatever color scheme you like. These are some actually red on the table. They're very bright red. These are just printed in PETG because I don't need the temperature management or anything, so it looks a bit more like the real color there. So these accent pieces just fasten onto the skirts with M3x10 screws. If I just grab one of the skirt pieces, these are some of the few pieces that are actually going to get printed. Depending, they're different STL files depending on the size of the frame you're building. So in my case, I go into the 350 by 350 build STL area, and I grab these skirt pieces from there, because obviously the bigger the build, the more skirt you need around them. With the skirts, anything that doesn't really have any strength to it, it's not doing anything structural, and you just have to use some small M3x10 screws going into some M3 T-slots, T-slot nuts like this. So for some of the rear pieces, for instance this one, it's got two keystone holes in, so this allows me to put USB or an Ethernet jack and things like that. I find wireless Ethernet, so you're putting a Raspberry Pi in this, but there's a lot of electronics and everything else around. It's not ideal for an antenna, so I'm going to be wiring Ethernet directly to these as well from a switch. so I have better reliability talking to the printers. This slot I'm going to put a USB adapter in here, or an HDMI even, so that I could use an external screen. But if I do have enough small screens, then I'll use those. But for the back of the printer, I will have, let me just go to a bigger view. You would have these three, and that makes up the entire back of the computer. So you can see you've got your mains input with a switch. I have a filtered input that just drops in here to the mains. All right, then we've got a blank for the rest of the space right now, but as I said, I may modify this to take some USBs if there isn't one already done. And then I have a keystone on the other side, which is going to have my network and probably either an HDMI or a USB on here. I might put the HDMI and the USB on the front as well, because obviously that's easier to plug things in and out of if you need to. Like I say, once you've got the motors and everything mounted, the next step to finishing that bottom before you go into any electronics would be putting a skirt around it. You don't have to do that right away. I'm going to do it just to get these pieces out of the way. But one nice thing you do with the Vorons, it becomes a bit of a standard thing, is using accent colors. So I have a bunch of these parts printed that just go over the end of the stepper motors and just gives it a little bit of protection from the belts and just makes it look a little bit nicer. And there's going to be, you have to put some heat set inserts into the mounting holes for it, which I don't have in these right now. I'm just going to do it in a moment, and then I'll go back and put them on, and I'll show you what it's like when it's done. I won't show you how to do heat set inserts again. Okay, so we have all of our, so each of these pieces, they got their respective spots to go in. These ones, they've got M5 T-nuts in them, because they are a single point and they've got a heavy weight on them. The rest of them are mostly cosmetic. The pieces with open frames, I've got a couple of red ones I had printed, so I decided I'm going to put this on the front of my printer at the bottom. They've got the accent pieces on. Right now the accent piece is the same color as this one. I got carried away and didn't notice I had a couple of extra skirts being printed when I was printing the access pieces. Anyway, when you put these in, just line up the T-nuts so that they'll drop into the frame, and put these on before the accent piece, put it on before you put it onto the frame. Believe me, I tried the other way and it's easier this way. Just drop it over the motor shaft, slide it up to the edge, and then when you screw these in, that will spin around and lock into place, and then you just screw it up and it will tighten up like that. And now that won't move, nice and tight. But they're very easy to remove if you need. Now at the front, this gap is going to stay because this is where the screen is going to go. Right here, so I forgot to print that piece. I'll have to get in there and print it, but that's basically all the base for this step all put together. Now what we've got to do now is put the idlers into play, which are these, and for that I'll need to turn the printer over. So let's get that done right now and get back to you. Okay, here's the printer turned upside down. Sorry about the surrounding bit of mess and things. Everything's been happening in a small area in my lab because I've got multiple projects going on. As you can see here, the skirts are on, sitting on its feet nicely. This is the aluminum print bed that I created. All this black stuff, so cleaned it up, made from a piece of scrap aluminium. It just happened to be nice and flat and perfect for this roll. So what we need to do is we're going to be installing the 4 pulleys. There goes one in each corner. They go directly above the holes that the pulleys are mounted underneath. So your 9mm belts will come all the way up to the top of the frame and go all the way down to the bottom. So if I look down from where that is, let me just adjust the camera, see it's directly above one of the holes. All right, we've got to do that for each corner. When you look at these, let me just bring one up on the bench. Okay, let's just get 2 of them. You can see these 2 are opposites. They're like mirrors. You can see the tabs here. These little tabs go into the slots in the extrusion to secure them. They push right up in the corner. That one I haven't mounted yet, the one that I just showed you. So you can see here I've got two that are the same, and then this one's different. The one that's on the frame right now is the same as this one. It's just I haven't put any inserts in there. You need the M5 one. So that's what I'll be doing next. So you can see the one that's here, I need to put some M5 T-nuts in. I'm going to put the ones in that just lock into place. I'm going to show a couple of them. The other two are exactly the same. So that'll be the end of this video. I won't do the linear rails yet because it's getting a bit long here. Alright, I've decided to use these M5 T-nuts. They're spring loaded, so you actually roll them in. They're like roll in, roll out. Very hard to get out once they're in, but they will allow you to slide. But as you can see, there's a lot more purchase that's going to be on the extruded frame. So I can tighten these up a little bit more without worrying about damaging them. I probably wouldn't damage the other ones anyway either, but I'm going to choose to use these ones for them. Let's get to the frame. Alright, when you're putting in these T-nuts, roll them into the frame, but we need to do the same thing about getting them lined up. In this case, we're a little bit more fortunate that once it's in here, we can actually slide it in, because it locks in, the tab locks into the slot of the T-frame, so it's much easier. There's no double angles or anything to worry about. So we'll set it in a little bit further away, and then we'll slide it into the corner. So when you drop these in, they don't always rock in right away, and you have to use a little bit of, that goes most of the way, but it's not getting past the tension. So what I do sometimes is I use a smaller, slightly smaller Allen wrench, like the one I've got in my hand here, and I'll just use it to get that last bit slot. So you'll hear it click into place. There we go. That's one. Other one. So they're going to be, sometimes if you put them two facing the same way, they've got a long side and a short side. Won't quite go in. But to this one. Second one, drop it in. Okay, there we go. Now this one is going to go here. Let's just get it into the screw holes first. Use the right wrench, of course. Yeah, I got my back turned to you. Hey, well, never mind. My extrusion settings, I don't have an ideal ABS printer or anything. We're a tiny bit off, not enough that's dimensional, but my little eyes didn't come out very well. I'm also not using button head screws on here, which is okay for this because it's not, it's purely cosmetic to use button head ones as opposed to these cap head screws. So anyway, it's in, slide it right to the end, and then just tighten it up. Obviously your Allen wrench could get in there. Okay. Tighten it up. Now the next one is going to use the same T-nuts, but the tab is on the other side, and it's going to screw into this side of the frame here. Okay. Aside from that, everything else is the same. And then the other two are going to be on the opposite side of the frame and mounted in the exact same way. I'm not going to bother going into the details of that one. Okay, that's all four of them in and tightened up. Anyway, so I'm assuming this is going to be the end of this video for now. And the next one we're putting the linear rails in, and then we'll be starting to look at the heat bed assembly and getting that put on. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.